All right. Hello, everybody. I am very excited and happy to have Anna on the podcast today. Hello, Anna.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah, so we've known Anna for quite a few years, and she is a creative genius, and so we'd
Yeah.
like to. um, but what I'm interested in, kind of starting with, first of all, well, you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll go back, and I want to hear
Okay,
how you got started.
cool. Yeah, so I'm Anna Nodolf. I'm a family photographer and I focus on real moments between families. It's well known in the photography community as like documentary family photography. And yeah, because I'm really passionate about actually being with people and not just like photographing them and on to the next. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where my heart is at, is connecting with my families and photographing their everyday real life.
Yeah, and just to talk about that for a second, I think it's really cool because so much of what we see is not actually real. Like,
Yeah.
you take 20 selfies and put your favorite one on Instagram, and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. But it's nice, and even I talk about this with my wife all the time. We're like, I look back at pictures from like a trip that we went on, and we're like, oh, that was the best trip ever. Remember how great it was? And you're like, wait a second, let's actually like think about that for a second. Do
Hmm.
you remember the like 3 hour meltdown in the
Yeah.
car? Like, you
Yeah.
forget about all that stuff. And so I think there's a lot of beauty in like what you do, because you get to capture like all the stuff, not just to like, let's smile for a minute. And I think
Hmm.
that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that it, I mean, I feel just as fulfilled by it as I think my clients do with their photos because I mean, think about we've done a full day, at least one, maybe
Yeah.
more together. And like I got to know your girls so much more in that
Hmm.
time, than I could have with just like, okay, everybody smile for me. And they're like, who's this lady? Like, oftentimes when I've done quick sessions, it's like, photographer lady, like they don't know my name, which is fine. But then
Hmm.
when I have more time to get to know them, it's like, I actually know what each of your daughters is like more interested in, what they're drawn to. And I can kind of study them while they're playing and then
Hmm.
make a photo that is more meaningful. Hopefully that's a goal to you guys because I'm informing my picture that I'm taking through the lens of like who she is, you know,
Hmm.
which is that's the part that I dig so much.
Yeah. And so, and you would say that for you, it's a lot more fulfilling than doing like posed photography,
Yeah.
because you get to actually like build a relationship with people over a longer period of time instead of just like.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to think about that too, because I actually watched this. Have you seen any of it's a Netflix series called Abstract and they follow different creatives.
A little
And
bit.
one of them is about photography and it's portraits and posing and stuff. Well, it doesn't teach you how to pose, but it talks about that a little. And I was like, man, I don't know, like this isn't really up my alley. But then I watched it and he kind of talked about the same thing. Like he talked about the time he spends with his subject that like it's his goal to like draw out a part of who they are through the lens, and that it's not just about like posing and taking a photo, but it's like who is this person.
Hmm.
And somehow he's able, like that's an amazing skill to me, to like be able to do that within a short time frame with someone. But so I am trying to kind of get better at doing that in like and start to do portraits more,
Hmm.
because all my stuff is pretty candid, but I've been working on that kind of drawing that lesson I've learned about how to connect into my portrait work,
Hmm.
and be able to do it faster. It's a challenge, but I like, being
Yeah.
challenged. I get bored if I'm not. So
Yeah, that's super cool. I think there's a major theme in most people that I've had a conversation with now, that if I think about it, it's like everybody, we're looking for that connection, like how to have that really good connection with other people. And that seems to be like the underlying like foundation of all these cool different things that we're all trying to do and work on. And
yeah.
it's really interesting that like, well, yeah, we all still want the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And among a time where we are all so hungry for it, right? Like we're
Yeah.
lacking connection in the way that we used to have it, but we're getting it more with our family and even with ourselves. Like I don't know, my experience through the quarantine has been a lot of like more connecting with myself.
Mm.
At first I didn't think I would be able to because we have a small house and I'm used to having, 6 hours of the day alone. So I'm
Yeah.
like, who are these people and why are they in my house? It's my family. But then I kind of got to, you learn a different part of yourself. You're forced to kind of like experience yourself in a new way, like building
Mhm.
relationship with yourself and your family. So I think that that's an interesting thing about like, yeah, connecting is almost different right now. And so
Yeah.
many people virtually connecting that didn't have to before. And
Yeah. And that's a really good point about like connecting with yourself at a different level, because how many of us even have time for that?
right.
In normal scenario, normal life. And now all of a sudden a lot of people have a lot more time than they've ever had.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you create the space, and maybe too, it's like a little uncomfortable, like
Yeah.
thinking about stuff that you maybe haven't wanted to think about for a while.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, learning and growing. I mean, it's like with our lives being so busy, and I'm usually not an advocate for slowing down. Like, I mean, I definitely appreciate a good Netflix binge, but I mean, like, just day to day, I'm always like, I've always been very active and
Hmm.
like social and just like going from one thing to the next. And if anybody ever told me like, oh, slow down, you're gonna burn out, I'd be like, I don't burn out. Like, that's not, if I slow down, I burn out. Like,
Yeah.
but it's crazy how much, being forced to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I actually do like this. I like this slowness of life. That's cool.
Yeah. And how quickly you like adjust to the
Yeah.
change. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, for me, I'm like, last year I was like the busiest I've ever been, like super busy all the
Yeah.
time. And then this year has been like the complete opposite of that. And it was like really
Yeah.
uncomfortable at first to
Yeah.
be so much less busy. And then now you're like, well, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
3 or 4 o'clock. Like, it's probably good for today.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
wow.
Rest is like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. Maybe you should have lunch by now.
Yeah.
Our whole schedule's messed up. It's like, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's nice to have. I feel like I mean, I knew my daughter before, right? Like we're tight, but having her home just constantly and doing schoolwork with her and experiencing different things with her than I normally get to, it's crazy how much more I feel like I know her. I don't
Mm,
know. Do you
yeah.
feel like that way with being home all day or were you home all day before?
Well, I've been home all day since January this year. Last year I
Okay.
wasn't home all the time. So there was less of an adjustment with COVID,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me. But it is a good question and interesting. I actually think that I'm better if I have a little bit more space.
Yeah.
Being around them all the time, it's like I find myself getting a little bit more like irritable than I normally would be, because I had space, just time to myself, time to think, and then come back and I can be more patient and I can let them be
Mm-hmm.
kids. But being around them all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I'm catching myself like, hey, just chill. It's okay. It's fine. They're just being
Yeah.
normal. They're not being any different. You're just
Yeah.
being more irritated because you're around it so much more.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, why are these kids so immature? Oh wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the energy, that I'm
Hmm.
just kind of like, how? Like, how are you just constantly moving? And it's like, it's a little bit distracting sometimes. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do miss having alone time. We don't really have a place to like escape to in our home either. So I spent some time, pretending to need to use the bathroom for long amounts of time,
Nice.
going on walks alone, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Survival.
it's an interesting, new development that people who are used to having that time alone are like trying to figure out,
Yeah.
how this works, and especially people that might be more introverted. And I tend to fall like somewhere like right in the middle, I feel
Yeah.
like. Um, but yeah, just one funny thing on the energy thing, that like a few weeks ago, my oldest, she was like, Dad, I just can't sleep. I'm like, okay, well, like, she's like, I'm just gonna go downstairs and like do a little workout. And I'm like, what? Like we're already in bed. And she has like come in after bed. I'm like, okay. So I I just lay there for a minute and then I go and I peek out the door and I like took my phone and a video. She's at the bottom of the stairs doing burpees.
Oh my gosh, I love
And
her.
she ended up doing like a 14-minute workout of like squats and burpees and running loops around the kitchen at like bedtime. Like, oh my gosh, kid, you're crazy.
That kitchen is very runnable around
Yes.
that wall you have. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. Mine kind of does the same thing. Like uh, she'll just be like, I'm not tired enough. I'm going to run around. And we think you're just going to like rev up your engine. You know, you're not going to get tired. But then it's kind of, they're at that age where I'm trying to sort of let her problem solve things herself. And if she does end up being more hyper, then, you know, how is she going to handle that? So it's funny how similar they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And letting them, it's cool that they have the awareness of like, I have all this energy and I need to do something with it. And they know they need to do something with it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, so let's take it back a little bit.
Forever. Yeah.
I know, kids. Well, there's so much to learn from them. If we let them teach us, there's a lot to learn. But for you, have you always known that you wanted to be a photographer?
No, I actually studied interior design.
Okay.
So always wanted to do something creative, something that had a lot of self-expression was kind of my interest. I don't even know like where interior design came into my mind as something that probably like an HGTV show or something, Trading Spaces or whatever. But like, I just knew, okay, doing something creative and working with people, like that's going to be my thing. And really that's essentially what I'm doing. It's just a different medium. So I loved going to school for it. I was obsessed with interior design all through college. I stayed to get my master's because I was like, oh, I don't want to be done with school. Like, this is my thing. And then I thought about teaching right out of it because I just didn't want to leave academia. And then I thought, well, I should probably I had a job in college at a firm that I wanted to keep with it for a while to kind of get more experience before I taught. So then I did that, and it was the recession, so it was kind of like I had a bit of a crossroads situation where it was like, do I continue, like working at a firm when I was like still kind of an intern, even though I'd been working there for years, and just because of like how the recession was, like people, there weren't very many opportunities for me to move up at that time. And then I decided to, because I get bored super easy, I decided to quit the firm where I was doing like commercials. So I was designing like elementary schools and like healthcare spaces.
Okay.
And then I decided to quit and just like work at a furniture store and try to build my clientele to start my own business. Because I heard from a few people that's how you do it. And that was fine. I mean, it wasn't what I thought it would be. And then, but then when I started taking photos of my designs with, a nice camera, I had people start to ask me to take photos of their families. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, it's really hard to get interior design work right now. So I'll just start taking photos of families. And then it just kind of took off. Kind of surprised me how quickly. And I think that a lot of it had to do with just like, I was in a community where a lot of my tight friends were and that I'd grown up with. And so like word got out fast and I was able to build my business really quickly on word of mouth and just relationships that I already had. And so then I just stuck with it. I do some dabble in design, graphic design and logo branding stuff a little bit too, because I just can't just do one thing. That's just not in me. So yeah, but it's nice to have the kind of balance of different types of creative stuff.
Cool. So yeah, you weren't even necessarily looking for it. It just kind of fell into place.
Yeah, yeah, people made me do it.
They're like, you're good at this. Keep doing it.
I was like, but do you want like a new living room? Because I can do that. And they're like, I don't know, but I want pictures of my newborn. I'm like, okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So it wasn't the dream, but it is now. So
Yeah. So it kind of, it evolved into the dream.
for sure.
That's cool. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's so fun to hear like how everybody's path is different. Like maybe you had a dream as a kid, and like in your case, you just like, I just, it grew, and it just
Yeah.
came into it. Not necessarily like something you always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I've been thinking about that a little bit because I used to think that, oh man, if I'd only studied photography or photojournalism or even marketing, I could have like taken photography in a different route, do like commercial work or
Hmm.
whatever. Sorry, my notifications are on. And I've always kind of told people, like, if they asked me, what's your sliding door moment? It would be, oh, but I didn't, I would love to know if I had studied photography, how my business would look now, or what type of photography I might have gotten into. But I had this realization this year, actually, that I don't think I'd want to change it anymore because I'm realizing how design and my experience with art and design has informed my work
Hmm.
subconsciously, but also I've been deliberate in the last couple of years to like really dig into my knowledge from a previous life and take
Hmm.
it into my current work, and it's changed me, honestly. Like I think so much more about composition and the design elements of line and shape and color while I'm taking a picture. It's not just like, okay, what's happening here?
Hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna snap. It's like thinking about bodies as shapes and
Hmm.
lines, and so, and that's all from would have learned that in photography a little, but I dove into it in
Hmm.
design. And so it's kind of interesting to see how you know I used to think that those 6 years of study were maybe not a waste of time, but like could have been used better.
Hmm.
But I really am convinced that it was the right thing for me because there's not a lot of photographers that have that specific background.
Yeah. And I think it can be a trap. And tell me if you think like oh, if only I had,
Yeah, yeah,
done
that's
this.
true.
But like you just said, all of that informed who you are now and what you're able to deliver. And, it might be totally different now, and maybe not in the way that you would want.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
that's true.
it's hard to
Yeah, it's
say.
interesting to think about though, like what it could have been, but also, yeah, like there's no way of knowing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But do you feel like you've always just pursued going in the direction that you wanted to with your photography?
yeah, yeah, to probably to my detriment at
Mm,
times because I get like excited about something I've learned or a direction that I'm taking my work. Like when I switched from just taking family portraits in the park to doing documentary family. I mean, I'm trying to remember if you guys were my clients before I started doing that, or if the first time I photographed you was in your home, right?
I think so. Yeah. I don't think we did anything pre. You know what? We went to a wedding that you were the photographer at, I think. But then,
Ah, okay, yeah.
yeah. But then having you guys photograph, or you photograph us, I think was in our house the first time.
Okay, yeah, because I had a lot of clients who were with me from the beginning, and I sort of I'm such an optimistic person that, and kind of my like my goal in life is just to get everybody to join the party. Like I'm always like, hey, this
Yeah.
is great. Like you will love this, trust me. And so I think sometimes I get overzealous about like, okay, this new thing, with photography that I'm doing. I'm super pumped about it. You're going to love it. And, the truth is, a lot of my clients did love it, but some of my clients didn't. And they found someone else to take their pictures in the park. And it's kind of, I thought at the time that was the right thing to do because I felt like I needed to always like do what was soul fulfilling for me.
Mm.
But now I'm kind of realizing that like I am fulfilled by being creative with photography, no matter what the subject, no matter the location. If I can be at a park with a family for 20 minutes to take one portrait, like, sure, that's not as exciting maybe as being in someone's home and documenting their everyday life, but I can make it fun and I can enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a big realization I've had, because there have been things where I'm like, hey guys, I'm doing this, and hey guys, I'm doing this. And like a lot of times people, my clients are wonderful people and they let me experiment and they're along for the ride for the most part. But sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh, that was a really bad business decision. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I should have at least still offered this basic package, or rather than just
Yeah.
being like, nope.
Yeah.
So I've learned a few lessons for sure.
Yeah, those are some good nuggets. Like, yeah, you want to always follow like what, the whole
Right?
theme of this podcast, what makes you feel alive. And you were doing
Yeah.
that. But there's other considerations, like you just said, to take into account when
Yeah.
you're moving through that. I also feel like, you can tell me if this is true, but it seems like there's just a part that's just like part of the curve. You know what I mean? Like in
Mm-hmm.
the earlier, maybe like the first third of your career or entrepreneurship or whatever, there's a lot of just like kind of figuring things out, and oh, this works well, and then oh, I like really like this, and then and then you're like, okay, now you're at a place where like you've seen a lot of stuff, and now you can make more informed, like better decisions
Yeah.
on both sides of the coin, the business and the fulfillment, having tried a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like part of the journey.
Yeah. I guess that's true. Yeah. I think maybe all fields for the most part, but especially creative fields, that there always has to be growth and experimentation, and maybe that's fueled by the fact that creatives like me get bored if they're doing the same thing over and over. Like it doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
creative anymore if it's just copy paste.
Yeah.
But it also, yeah, like times change too. You're adapting
Mm-hmm.
to like the world around you as well. So I think it is just an inevitable,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
that curve of like change.
Yeah.
Um, I think it might have benefited me business wise if I had slowed my roll a little bit. I just get very excited.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, yeah, I really like your point, because maybe that's just something to expect,
Mm.
you know, like
Yeah.
maybe I just need to help my clients understand that my business is always going to be changing, but like in terms of taking care of your clients, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
always here for you, especially the ones from the beginning. Like, hey, if you want
Yeah.
pictures of a specific thing that's not offered, like let me know. Like I'm your person. I'm down to help you with what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the lessons that I learned in business was, in the beginning, I was really good about like asking for feedback all the time. So
Mm,
I was new. I was like,
yeah,
constantly soliciting advice, feedback from people like
yeah,
respected my clients. And then after a while, you're like, all right, I got this.
yeah,
And then you kind of stop asking for
that's
it. And I think that was a detriment to me for
yeah,
sure. Um, so I'm trying to
yeah.
like,
That's a really good point. You sound like Derek, because he's always like, do a survey. Like anytime I'm like I want to do it this way, but I don't know what my clients think. I'm just gonna text like a couple people, and he's like, eh. Wrong
yeah,
answer.
yeah,
Yeah, it is a good idea.
yeah,
Yeah, it's hard because I really like to follow my heart, and there's a reason why I don't have a boss, right? Like I
hmm,
want my business to be what I enjoy doing.
for sure.
But kind of like I said before, I'm getting to a place where I feel like I can enjoy photography no matter what. So
Hmm.
I shouldn't be hesitant to gather information on what my clients need from me if I can do that. Like if changing it for them just is another challenge for me to make myself love it in this new way.
Hmm. Yeah.
I,
And then
I
that
think,
doesn't mean like the new thing that you're doing gets thrown out either. That's
yeah,
still like, you know, having this original thing that made you so successful. And like you said, you grew your business like so fast, and then you're like, well, let's
yep,
do this now. Well, maybe keep a little bit of
yeah,
that.
exactly. That's exactly what happened. Like if you want to take it down to like a 30-second explanation.
Nice.
I'm pretty
Nice.
lucky that a lot of people were like super down, but yeah, I look
Yeah.
back and I'm like, oh, why did I do it like that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So it's just a fun journey.
yeah,
What do you feel like you're looking to now? So, we're
yeah.
we're in a totally different environment. Like, what is the future that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of time to like slow down and do things that I've always kind of needed to do, like update my website, my blog, try to get some SEO flowing.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to, kind of like cast a wider net in terms of clients because at the start of my business and for a long time, like it was fully referral based. So,
Yeah.
super fun stuff of, website updating and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but also what has I mentioned I think I mentioned my kid class I've been working on for.
Oh, you haven't mentioned that in here. I
Oh,
know about it, but
okay.
yeah.
Okay, well, yeah. Yeah, so my design experience has kind of gone into developing this class for kids to explore design elements in photography and kind of learn how to see the space around them rather than just like take pictures of like a leaf. They can look at it and see lines or the
Hmm.
shape or symmetry. So it's been pouring out of me. Like I feel like that's my biggest creative excitement thing right now. And not that I don't miss photographing families, but it just feels like a different season. Like I'm settling into this sort of like um, yeah, like a moment for me where it's my writing moment. so
Hmm.
so I'm helping my daughter learn about photography. She's helping me do the class. And yeah, it's so based on my design background and my current craft. So it's just coming so from my heart, because it's
Hmm.
my past and my present. So that's been really fun. And I always have these really big ideas. And I've been wanting to do this for so long, but the quarantine is what like really gave me the space to just do it. And so that's been a really nice feeling of like, not only have I been able to kind of shift my business a bit during this time and still, have some profit coming in from the class when I can't photograph families.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also just like giving me a creative outlet and to feel like I'm using my time for my business and not just like, what am I doing? So, yeah, I mean, that's what's now for me. But that's also what's next because I have like a bajillion classes that I'm writing at one time
Cool.
because there's a
That's
lot of design elements. So,
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah, because you have that unique perspective with your background plus photography. And I was just thinking about earlier, you told me that, you were going to become a teacher potentially out of school.
yeah,
And so now
it's
you're
a
getting
really
that
insightful point of
opportunity.
view. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I didn't bring that up to make that connection, but you're totally right. Like it's been in my heart this whole time and I just haven't like noticed it until now. And
Mm,
it's really giving me life.
that's so cool. And do you find that you actually are learning and growing more by having to
So,
teach it?
yes.
Yeah.
Uh, well, what's funny is a lot of so I posted about the class and did a beta test and I had like an overwhelming response. I was like shocked and so excited And then I have been seeing some of it was pretty popular among my friends and also my photographer friends. And so
Hmm.
to see my photographer friends posting things that are like, you can see like, oh, that's a really beautiful shape. And then I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like I see the shape that, and maybe that's just what's in my mind because that's the class I wrote. But then
Hmm.
they write back and they're like, no, I actually took the class with my kids and I was inspired by it. I'm like, oh, that's the best feeling. It's so cool because it really does feel like, not that those photographers wouldn't have seen those things before, but it gives them the tools to break down what they know, just like in what they're guided by in their gut, to
Hmm.
like be specific digestible things for their kids to understand. And you can't help but see it when you're talking to your kids about it. Like,
Hmm.
I have them play games like go on scavenger hunts and find, color schemes and things like that. And so the parents are engaging, depending on the age of the kid, engaging more or
Yeah.
less. And me too, like I'm just like, it's like I have these special glasses on that everywhere I go I just see it more and more. And
Hmm.
it's funny because I already thought I was doing it, but the more, I mean, it's just like another layer,
Hmm.
the more you think about it and talk about it and analyze it, the more you're aware of it when you're photographing. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
pretty cool to have that as like a byproduct of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've always thought that your type of creative has like you just said, a different type of glasses. You just see
Oh,
the
thank you.
world so different than most people.
Oh, thanks. That's
Yeah.
that's cool to hear because I think that like it's easy to get caught up in kind of like who you think is a great photographer and you're like, oh, I want to like photograph more like that, or which is good to get inspiration, but then it's always bringing it back to, okay, what's the lens and the scope of like who I am in this,
Hmm.
finding inspiration from other people, but like drawing it into, okay, now how does this apply to like the brand that I've already created and the creativity that I've already started, which I think is really important for client work. But I do think that there's a time and space for experimenting outside of your established like creative lens, which
Mm.
is something that I think I want to try to do more. Not just like
Yeah.
approaching a photo, like how do I take this, but like what would be the last thing I would think of doing when composing this photo? Or what would so and so do, like a photographer
Hmm.
that I love. So I think that might be an interesting way to challenge myself. Um, Next time I get bored, hey, I should start a list.
Yeah.
My
Well,
board
and I think you
list.
just said something like super important, which is to be inspired by that and try it, do it, but then bring it back to like who you are, right? Because I think
Yeah.
it's easy to be like, oh, I wish I could just be that person or do that thing or whatever,
Yeah.
instead of like making it your own. And then that's like an unrealistic expectation that's never going to happen anyways.
Yeah.
And so then there's the disparaging space of like fulfillment because, well, like I'm never going to cross that gap because you're not
Yeah.
trying to be more you're trying to be somebody else.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially with, you know, Instagram and being just inundated with like photography, especially obviously because it's a photo platform, but like just creative work
Hmm.
that's brilliant, right? And and Pinterest too. And I think it's easy to get to start to compare and to cut off wanting to look at other people's work because you don't want that feeling of like, oh, their stuff is better, or oh, I wish I was this. But I don't know, I'm starting to like value that, just sitting with something and being okay, being a little uncomfortable and being like, what is it about this that I love and why am I comparing myself? And maybe finding like some goodness in that.
Hmm.
Not starting to, of course the talk of like, oh, I'll never be that or whatever, like that's not healthy and you should, kind of take a break from looking at other people's work if that's happening. But I think um having that feeling of like, oh, I would have never thought to take that photo.
Hmm.
And then if it feels a little bit like a punch in the gut, like why don't I make pictures like this? Then it's like, no, wait, what do I love? Like, what's working for me here? And being able to analyze it and then take that critical eye to your own work, like that can be really powerful. And I think a lot of people shy away from that because, and I have before, because it's like, well, I don't want to get distracted by what someone else is doing.
Yeah.
But it can be
Yeah.
a really cool tool to have, you know.
I totally agree. It's because it's hard to sit with something that's uncomfortable, like you just
Yeah.
said. But then something that I've been learning and trying to shift lately is just like instead of coming from a place of lack, coming from a place of abundance,
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of really what that is like when you're going and you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you're saying, well, I lack whatever they have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if it's just we all have everything that we need and we're inspired by that
Mm-hmm.
thing, and we take what we can from that and add it to whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And just having that feeling of like, oh no, it's all here, there's
Yeah.
abundance, it's
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
I love that.
And it's just for me, it's a much better place to come from, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really great perspective as a creative because, I think, a lot of people, not just creatives, but like, yeah, I think that when you find the right thing that fulfills you, that it starts to kind of like pour out of you, which isn't necessarily every season. Like there are times when it feels like dry.
Mm-hmm.
But that those times, because we're so used to feeling like the overflowing creativity when we have those dry seasons, it's like, what? Am I never I remember thinking in college, like in my early 20s, I'm going to run out of ideas. Like I literally told my friend that. Like, who? Of course you're not going to run out of ideas. But I genuinely was scared that I would just like burn out and not come up with anything else. And it's funny because it's less about that. It's less about like having something and running out, having a supply of something and running out of it. It's more about building your endurance to create. Like if you continue to learn to be able to find a way to make something that you're proud of and make a ton of, I don't know what I can say on here, crap, make a ton of
whatever you want.
Okay. Yeah, for like that it's okay, first of all, just to establish that it's okay to make some really shitty work. Like that's fine. That's part of the process. But like developing your stamina to like make work and to be okay with it not always being brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, and like you say, you have what you need to do that. And you have the endurance, you have the drive, you have the skills, you have those things to be able to get yourself to a place where you can keep knowing how to create in the dry times,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like that's, yeah, like a really interesting point you make about abundance. And I think for me, that's what it means to me is like not an abundance of ideas because that can run out, but an abundance of the ability to make it happen, to make it happen when it doesn't feel like it is, I guess.
Yeah. And like detach from the feeling. Like it feels bad making this work I'm not proud of, but I'm still going to make it because it's part of the process.
Yeah, that part is hard for me.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super hard.
Yeah, like you're preaching to me right now because that is the part that's like, because I'm driven so much by like loving doing something that the second it feels like I don't love it, I'm like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to push through.
Yeah.
But it's so important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many years have you been shooting now?
Well, I started, yeah, 8 and 9.
9 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've pushed through.
I should have. Do you put like photos in the show notes?
We post them to Instagram.
I should give you like some of my, like one of my first photos and then a recent, just to see the growth.
Yeah, for sure. That would be awesome.
It's really fun to look through my old work. Like it's very, very fun because in a way, like I'm joking about how it's humbling because it is, because I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I made my baby lay on a stack of books because I saw it on Pinterest, like use them as a pillow. And now I look back and I'm like, this is horrible. Like she was not comfortable. uh, so weird. But then I look back on some of it and I can see my voice already, you know, even though I had no idea what I was doing, the focus was off, the exposure's terrible, but like I could see a little glimpse of like who I am now then. And I think that's a really interesting thing to like, you know, be able to do when you're, yeah, maybe that's a good exercise in a dry spell of like, like, I don't know, I don't have any more ideas. I'm afraid of running out of ideas. Okay, well, what were my old ideas? You know, because it's entertaining to see your old work for one. It's fun to laugh at yourself, but to be able to detach from the feeling of like, ugh, this is horrible. Well, hey, you know, is there anything good about it? Let's start there.
Yeah. That's such a good question to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think we need to be sometimes, I mean, for me, I need to be more, sometimes I need to be more critical of my work in order to grow, but sometimes I need to be more, like find the good in it, you know?
So how do you know which one to be?
Yeah. Maybe you need to do both in each situation, I guess.
Yeah, it's an impossible question. I just
Well, that was my quick answer.
Nice.
Because any critique, any like negative critique should probably come with like a little bit of optimism. And that goes for when you're critiquing yourself, I feel like, you know, and if the only good in, you know, looking at something that you've made that you're like, wow, this is so terrible, I can't find anything good in it. Okay, well, maybe the good in it is that you can laugh about how terrible it is, you know, like it may not even be anything that, you know, like you're saying, detaching from the emotional feeling of like being so attached to something you made and being able to say, I don't have to make this amazing, perfect, brilliant thing every single time. Like nobody does, you know?
Yeah. Because it's not you either.
Yeah.
I think it's easy, you know, we get caught up in this identity of like, okay, so I'm a photographer, I'm a musician, I'm a whatever. And then if I make something bad, that means I'm bad, but that's not, they're separate things.
Yeah.
But I think that's really easy to do. You're like, oh, but this is my life. This is what I do. This is what people know me for. And that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. That's an interesting point. Yeah. Cause like if every photo I made saw the light of day, like if everyone saw every photo and they all represented me, like, huh, like no thanks, you know?
Yeah.
But we're not going to grow if we don't make the, you know, experiment and make the bad stuff before we can get to the good stuff.
Yeah. So if you were to talk to somebody who's in the early stages of trying to figure out their path, what would you offer them?
In any type of path?
Any type of path.
Oh man, okay.
In the path of fulfillment, like we're trying to figure out like what am I here to do?
Yeah, I think my biggest lesson for myself that I'll just kind of like revisit is the sliding door moment of like realizing that the experiences you've had and the skills you've developed, even if you're launching onto a new path that you think is completely disconnected from anything that you've been involved with or invested your time in. Like, look for ways that they tie together, because you might be surprised at what gifts and talents you were able to cultivate doing other things, even like, you know, parenting, or in relationships with your friends, or a past job. Like, there's so many experiences in our lives that inform who we are, and to like have an open mind about how those things can translate into where your heart is leading you, I think can be really powerful, because I wish I'd realized that earlier.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the timing of realizing it has given me a boost when I needed it, but I also am like, you know, if you can realize that from the beginning of like, okay, if you're, I'm not a list person, but if you are a list person, like maybe making a list of like your skill set and like what things you loved about your, maybe you quit your job to pursue something creative, or, and like list out all of your skills, all the things you loved about that job, and try to think about how those things might carry over into this category of like what you want to be doing, because you might be surprised how many things translate, and how many things have, you know, informed who you are, that is moving into this new, you know, path.
Yeah. I love it. I love it, because
Cool.
that automatically forces you to have some like gratitude about where you've been,
Yeah, yeah,
instead
yeah.
of like, oh, but I want to be here so bad. But then
Yeah,
I
and
can,
why did I waste this time? And
yeah.
I can't believe I just told your listeners to write a list. Like, that's probably the last thing. I never advise people to do that. I don't keep lists at all.
How
So
about this? But just write things on sticky notes and put
yeah,
them all over the place
yeah.
randomly. Is that better?
Or set alarm. I set alarms on my phone to remind
Nice.
myself to send out email to.
Oh yeah.
Super organized.
That's the only way to live. Got to
Yeah.
have reminders.
Or draw sketches. You can draw sketches if you're not a list person.
Yeah. Nice. Well, man, I feel like this is a pretty good spot to wrap
Yeah,
things up. And
this has
is
been
there
great.
anything else that you'd like to add?
Um, I don't think so. I'd love to provide some information
Yeah, tell us about your
if
website
anybody
and all that
wants.
stuff.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'll send you the links to the things, but it's just annanodolf.com. Super simple.
Okay.
It's my name. And yeah, family photography, and there's some weddings on there, you know, kind of
Yeah,
the gist. But also, if families want to check out the kid class, I can provide that information too.
cool.
Right now,
Awesome.
we have, yeah, a few classes, a few lessons live, and I'm working on some more.
Sweet. I love it. Teaching is so fun.
Yeah.
And I'll just put in my, stamp of approval for, having Anna out. And when things are open back up and she can come out, if you really want to capture like a day of like what it's actually like in your family. And I highly recommend having Anna come out and just be there. And she makes it super easy. And I've told her before, and I've mentioned this, like, the last thing I want to do is like go have a photography session. Like,
Yeah.
I've got plenty of other stuff to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like to have Anna come out, to have you come out and just like hang out with us and just kind of be a fly on the wall. And I mean, also, we interact still, but
Mm-hmm.
just go through the day. It doesn't feel like this thing. It's just like, all right, we're just going to do what we had planned today. Maybe do some
Mm-hmm.
extra fun stuff and just capture it. And then we'll be able to look back and, see all these moments that we normally wouldn't get. Cause also I think one of the big things for us is like, we don't have a lot of me and my wife together, or like me and my wife with the kids. It's always me taking a picture of them or her taking a picture of us.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that added like outside
Yeah,
shot, of
I,
the whole
that
thing.
reminds me of that photo I took of you guys on the beach when you were like having a moment together when the girls were playing in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the back of your heads, but you were like looking out on the water. It just felt like such a little it was like the crack of time, you know, where you're able to be together.
Yeah.
And the kids were leaving you alone for like 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that
Yeah.
little moment.
I
Yeah,
love that.
we never would have captured that. That's actually our desktop picture on the computer upstairs.
I love it.
So
Well,
anyway,
thank you, David. That's great.
yeah,
I'll just take that recording and type it up and put it on my website testimonials.
feel free, whatever you need.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anna. I really had a great time talking to you, and I
Same.
think that you had a
Always.
lot of cool things to share that were, yeah,
Thank
that are,
you.
yeah,
And if you and the fam are down for some virtual hangs, we can do like a little online game night.
yeah, we'll make it happen.
Okay, cool. Say hi to Wayne
Sweet.
for me.
All right, we'll do. Bye.
Bye.